Hello, and welcome to the Shelly Show. I'm Shalendra, and you're watching the simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I hope you and your family are safe, and everyone is fighting COVID as a team. We got to get over that, okay? For you to view this episode and other sessions that I run on emerging technologies live, I would request you to follow me so that you can be alerted when a live session is on. This gives you an opportunity to ask a direct question to my guests. So please press the follow button if you're watching this on LinkedIn. If you're watching this on Twitter, please press the follow button. If you're watching this on YouTube, please press the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you can be alerted when a live session is on. And if you're watching this on Facebook, you can do two things. You can like and also share this video with groups that are focused on emerging technologies, customer engagement, digital transformation, so more and more people can benefit from my guests. Today's topic is dear to my heart, Africa. Now, I read about Africa in my school curriculum, but I've never been to Africa. It was called the Dark Continent. I don't know whether that's still safe to say, but that was what I read in my book, in my textbooks. So Africa has experienced rapid urbanization and social transformation in recent years, but has been slow in demonstrating digital progress. One reason why digitization on the continent has been sluggish is because the digital divide between African countries, pointing to the fact that they lack fair and equal access to advanced technologies. So let's talk about that. Africa's internet penetration is quite low compared to the rest of the world. For example, the continent's internet penetration averages around about 39.6%, which was last year, compared to 62.7% globally. This ties back into its existing digital divide, which is pronounced with Kenya having 89.8% internet access, while Burundi remains at 5.3%. 3 years ago, Africa was reported to have consumed only 1% of the total international internet bandwidth globally. So there is a huge divide on internet. So let's see where digital stands. Today, I've got some very senior digital transformation leaders from Africa who are going to share their point of view. So let me bring them in. But before I bring them in, please like this video, share this video, and also tell us which part of the world are you watching this video in. For example, if you're watching in India, tell us the city and the country, country. So tell us about that so that we can... I try to understand where the reach is coming from. Do we have anyone watching us from Africa? Please say that, and I'll bring that in a minute. Okay, without any further ado, let me start bringing in my guests. My first guest is Ishmael Mpabanga. He's the founder and CEO of the Digital Transformist Africa. Ishmael is Africa's technology and business leader with extensive experience in banking and financial services, and has been driving business transformation through digital technologies across the continent. Okay, so let's bring in Ishmael and ask him about him. Ishmael, welcome to the Shelly Show. How are you?
Hey, Shay. I'm good. I'm good. Sun is shining. You know, we're kids are happy, and yeah, it's an honor to be on your show. Thank you for having me. It's fantastic.
Good stuff, Ishmael. So tell us about yourself. What do you do? Give some color to your background, please.
I think you gave a lot of color to my background already, and I'm sure the other guests as well that are sitting backstage are a lot more colorful than I am in terms of their careers. But we work as a collective to ensure that Africa is a success, right? You mentioned some stats in the beginning, and I will touch on those stats in our main discussion. But who am I? I'm born in Zimbabwe. I grew up in London in Australia, educated mostly in Australia. I came back about 10 years ago to make a difference, and best decision I've ever made. So I worked in marketing and communications, worked in the banking space, worked in social media where I made some great contacts, been involved in digital transformation and customer engagement frameworks, strategies, and just ensuring that we actually bring digital transformation and customer engagement strategies at the forefront of Africa, and giving everybody a more positive view and just some insights, because a lot of people don't know what we're doing. So we're about to tell you.
Good stuff. One question: you were born in Zimbabwe. Do you play cricket?
I did play cricket. I played cricket, basketball. I used to do the 100, 200, and 400-meter athletics. And I also dabbled in a bit of rugby. So I was a bit of an all-rounder. So team sports were my thing. And that's why I live by the mantra, be the beacon of light that enables others to succeed, because I believe in the power of the collective to achieve. So again, thank you for having me.
Good stuff. Let me get the other guests as well. So my next guest is Roland Naidoo. He's the Customer Operations Executive at MultiChoice Africa. Let me bring him in. Hi, Roland. Welcome to the Shelly Show. How are you doing today?
Shelly, good and you, man. Not as eloquent as Ishmael, so I hope I don't embarrass myself. I'm African, born in Africa, no plans to leave, because I think this is where it's all going to happen in the next few years. I am an engineer by trade. I have a master's in engineering thermodynamics, which is so far removed from where I am now. But I've never described myself as a digital transformation leader ever. So thank you for adding another title, and also the promotion in the WhatsApp group. So I must appreciate that from you guys. Thank you. So for those of you who don't know, Shaylee and Ishmael promoted me to CEO of MultiChoice, and I didn't even know. So that's great. And I love telling stories, as Ishmael knows, but my biggest drive is youth empowerment in South Africa, and starting to make us believe that we are actually the best at what we do, and stop believing that we are anything other than that, and leading with purpose. That's my purpose.
Good stuff. And I must say that there's a huge opportunity in Africa, what I think, and we should all work together in bringing that out. Okay, let me bring the other guests. So the only woman in the house, only lady in the house. We've got Tobias, if I've got it right. We'll ask her. She's the head of customer experience at Sub-Saharan Africa at Uber. So we've got someone from Uber. This is first. Let me get Adi. Hi, Adi. How are you? Welcome to the Shelly Show.
Hi, thanks for having me. And it is Tobias.
Tobias.
Correct. So I look after customer experience for Sub-Saharan Africa for Uber. My background is typically in financial services, so the tech world is interesting and incredibly fun. I fully believe in engagement and the customer agenda for the continent of Africa. So I'm always pushing that 100%, but also deem this to be an incredibly important discussion and think that we need to do more of these to position our agenda, as well as I think elevate what we're currently doing on the continent. So I'm incredibly excited to be here and interested in seeing what I can learn, as well as seeing what I can share with the broader group. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Before I bring in my next guest, I would request everyone here, whoever is watching, please feel free to ask questions to our guests. Put those questions in the comment section, and I will ask those questions in the end in the audience Q&A section to our guests. And please don't forget to like and share and retweet whatever you're doing this video, so more and more people can learn from these great digital leaders. Okay, my next guest, Mike Sharman. He's the co-founder of so many companies that I stopped count. And so I thought, let me bring him in and ask him what is he doing. So let's bring in Mike. Hi, Mike. So many companies that you founded.
There are a couple. My claim to fame is being a co-founder of a digital agency called Retroviral, and Retroviral has made more brands go viral globally than any other agency in Africa. We focus on branded content. We like creating stickiness for brands and the ability to connect with an audience. And for us, virality is a combination of eyeballs and converting to action, sales, downloads, subscriptions, whatever it is that you have to move the needle on in terms of that activity. And most recently, we launched a product called matchkit.co about a year ago, where we're helping athletes to better commercialize their careers. We feel that athletes have been hugely impacted by COVID. The Olympics nearly didn't happen. There's been a lost generation of young athletes, both men and women. Women in particular, suffer quite aggressively from a gender pay gap. And we're looking at ways to better commercialize those aspects and help athletes convert themselves into personal brands and we're making some good traction both on the African continent, on South America, and also within the United States. So very excited to chat and tell your audience and your guests from around the world why Africa is the most important continent to be investing in right now.
Good stuff. Two things I must say. One, so your company Retroviral. I would request if you can help this video to go viral as well. That'll be great.
So I'm on the second screen, pushing it through the internet.
And secondly, just I must comment here, Mike was named one of the Mail and Guardian's top 200 young under 35 South Africans in 2013. And he is the co-founder of influencer marketing platform webinfluential.com. So please ask your team to get this video viral as well. Maybe we will get some good eyeballs. Okay. My last but not the least guest is Dr. Rutendo Hwindingwi. I am so sorry with the name if I've got a tongue twister, but let's bring him in. He's from Deloitte School of Leadership. He's the business development leader there, and he's helping build the business landscape in Africa. So let's get Dr. Rutendo. Dr. Rutendo, I'm not going to again try the second name. Please introduce yourself.
No, it's a pleasure, man. Just call me Rutendo, man. Don't call me doctor. Nobody's sick on this program. And thanks again for making the time. I just, before I introduce myself, just to recollect, Ishmael was bragging about him being all round in terms of cricket, all those sports. I think, Shalindo, you have to be a bit specific, especially in this digital world. A person can be an all-rounder from a digital perspective, but never have played the sport. So we don't know if his experience is based on practicality or is on the gaming Xboxes and playing a lot of games, and theoretically is all around. I'm just putting it out there for clarity of the audience. But thanks again for having me on the show. And I think, from an Africa perspective, I play a key role or a privileged role, let me put it that way, where I deal a lot with multinationals and multilateral organizations wanting to invest on the African continent. And believe it or not, even under the current circumstances, there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of excitement, whether it's from Europe, the US, from China, Asia, everybody wants to invest in Africa. But the reality I always bring, because I say I'm an African realist, is that Africa contributes only 3% of global GDP. Now, when you take that in terms of the bigger picture, your Uncle Sam's, your UK companies, your Asia companies, we're a drop in the ocean in terms of our GDP contribution as a continent. But we've got a huge population, which is 1.2 billion, which gives us some sort of demographic dividend. But the strength of Africa is not in terms of how big we are, but is what we do. And I think the impact or the growth of Africa going into the next generation is how do we tap into the global ecosystem with what we have. That's the sweet spot. And we've seen it with countries like Singapore, you see it with countries like even Israel, who are small, but the impact that they make is strategic. And I think that mind shift as Africa, when we look from a commercial perspective, when we look from an investment perspective, when we realize and say, guys, what is it that we have that when we tap into the global economic system, we make an impact? That's our differentiator. And there are a few nuggets of the African continent that have done that. If you look at Rwanda from a digital perspective, one of the smallest countries in Africa, but the impact they're making digitally. You've got your big popular names like Nigeria, South Africa, et cetera, et cetera. But when you're looking at the digital landscape, the world is your oyster. You're no longer prohibited by borders. You're no longer prohibited by people, by policies. Overnight, you go into the global landscape. And that's why your technology companies are making an impact. So it'll be great having this conversation, because I think where we are as Africa, we're poised for success. It'll be great to participate in the conversation. So thanks again for having me as a guest, and I look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Good stuff. Let me start with some kind of a comment. And there is a myth, possibly, and I don't know, you guys live in Africa. There's a myth or there's a statement that people say around that Africa doesn't have skills. Is that true in any way or form? I doubt it. Is that a generalization that the larger global business community shares? What do you guys think about Africa doesn't have skills in digital space? Who wants to start? Well,
Geez, Shay. I mean, talk about the gloves are off before we even start, mate. I mean, we are live, right? So I guess Might as well get into it. I can guarantee you, the majority of the people on this call are very passionate about this. So if you start this way, you're opening up a complete can of worms, and you better be ready for the responses you're going to get. All right. So yes, of course we've got the skills. Like it's. Let me put it to you this way. You mentioned some stats in the beginning, and they were. I'm not going to say to my disliking, but I think we need to set the record straight. Africa is $180 billion future economy. Right? We have over 700,000 developers on the continent alone. Right? If I could tap into 50 of them, we'll build some incredible things. Right? I mean, you look at digital transformation. We've got the youngest population in the world, soon to be the youngest population in the world. You've got urbanization. You mentioned urbanization, and a lot of people that are going to be using the internet and connecting globally. Yes, we have the talent. Yes, we have the skills. We have the IP, the institutional knowledge. There's a lot of people that work in corporates who have gained loads of experience, and I'm one of them who've come from that space, right? And I think for the rest of the world to truly understand the potential that Africa has, you need to connect with the right people. And I truly believe that the people that are on this in this forum today, right, are the ones that you should connect with if you really want to grasp what's happening on the African continent. So the answer for me is yes, it is here. You just need to know where to look for it.
Please, can I take the glass off next?
Oh, sorry, Roland.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Roland.
Eshmael, can you point anybody who says that in my direction? I've got a pair of boxing gloves and a ring close by.
Yes.
So at the
from the school. I mean, those biceps are hidden, but look at those things. There we go.
At the risk of being crass, I think it's an idiotic statement to make. Number one, so I love relating stories. In 2014, I had a discussion with the IBM lab when they were developing the Watson project, just after it had won Jeopardy in the US. And I thought, this is amazing, right? This technology is fantastic. What can we do with it? So I got a quote from professional services from a company. I'm not going to tell you where, but it was 7 or 8 figures. And they said, we'll build this for you. And I thought, actually, here's an opportunity to see what we can do. So we took 6 call center agents. Guys, I'm saying call center agents, people you just forget about normally, right? And we said, let's get that professional services to train these guys in developing artificially intelligent chatbots. Today, we run one of the best chatbots on the planet, having ex-call center agents develop it, created a new skill and a new job set within the company. Now, who in their right mind says that we don't have the skill? I can guarantee you those people haven't even dug below the surface. I'm all for developing that skill. I have a rule in my department at the office that we hire under 25s with the right skill, Black, African, female. That's what we do. And I cannot, listen, if I had to expose this forum to some of those ladies, you'd be blown away. So anybody who believes we don't have the skill, drop me a line. I'll introduce you to some of the people in my team, not even myself. And we'll prove to you that we have the skill.
Before I go to Mike, can I make a comment? I was, there's this portal called Fiverr where you get people contracting. And every time I go put a post on Fiverr for a request, you know what? 95% of the response comes from Africa. 95% of the time, right? So I would doubt, I don't know who said that, but I've heard that people saying, but I don't believe in it. Mike, what do you think?
Sherry, I think one of the biggest problems, and I think you kind of caveated the start of your conversation with the fact that you've never even been to Africa. And the thing is, like, Africa is just seen as one giant landmass. And I think the reality is like the different cultures, the different nuances between each market. It's, there's cultures of people that are neighbors and share a border, yet they're completely different. I mean, South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Tanzania, if you just go and spend a few weeks in each of those markets, like, there'll be such differences. There'll be a product that works in Kenya, M-Pesa, from a financial services perspective that explodes, yet it doesn't necessarily have the kind of stickiness in our market in South Africa. And I think the hugest detractors are generally from people that have never been to Africa. There's a lot of hearsay, there's a lot of misunderstandings and miscalculations. Yet the startup culture, the hustle, the ability to solve problems that are based on human need as opposed to human greed, I think those are the most important things that we're solving on a daily basis, whether it's been transportation, whether it's remittance payments, whether it's other financial services and the use of blockchain that hasn't even been considered in other parts of the world. And I think that's the reality. Like, Africa has a terrible stigma. We're treated like second-class citizens in terms of the way in certain market political situations unfold. Look at the US. Like, that's the biggest political joke in the world right now. Yet, we're developing solutions that we can make actual people's lives different. And we have real problems, and we have real solutions where the tech makes those problems go away. And I think that's the reality of what we are solving for. We're solving for not to be the biggest platforms, not to have the most revenue or the most valuations. For us, there's no point in being a unicorn if you're not solving a problem. And I think that's the reality, is we need to be valued in a very different light because of the problems and the challenges that we're solving and we're faced with on a daily basis within our various markets.
Adi, what do you think?
I was just about to jump in, actually, because I really appreciated Mike's statement about us catering to our society, and we're basing our solutions on human need. Those are the problems that we solve. We solve for our people, and we don't solve for greed. And I think that's a fundamental difference between a purely, capitalistic society where you're driven by the money or the dollar signs, right? I think Africa is fundamentally different in that sense. And so I think once you have Africans creating solutions for Africans, it's a very different conversation when you're trying to plug and play something that's created elsewhere without understanding our context and understanding that parts of even sub-Saharan Africa are incredibly different to each other, that you need to understand the ethnography of the landscape that you operate in. You cannot come in here dictating what it should be or what the ideal looks like. So the notion that we don't have the skill is unfounded. And I don't believe that you can base it on hearsay. Come through, pull through. Come and live here for a second. Come and check out East Africa, check out West Africa, have conversations. Understand that we are innately entrepreneurial as a nation. And entrepreneurship doesn't often look the same. If you're comparing us to a developed country like the US or Europe, you can't expect like for like. And so I encourage anyone who before they make a statement of that nature, spend some time, ask the right questions, talk to the right people, and then make your judgment. Don't base it all from hearsay or reports that you would have read. So I'm, yes, incredibly passionate about this statement and don't believe it to be true either.
Okay. Rutendo, what do you think?
And now I'm frightened to speak because, if you say something untoward, like what everybody else is saying, then you get shot in the head. So, but this is virtual. So you guys don't know where I live, so I don't have to worry about you guys coming to me in the evening and saying we disagree with you. But I think you bring an important point. In terms of skill set, I agree with everybody. But, one of my major frustrations with Africa, and I think we've all gone through this, is that, we are not where we want to be. And digital has brought a critical inflection point. And painful as it may be, even COVID, and I'll highlight on that. I talked about, and I'm just going to throw some stats here. I've talked about Africa and its global GDP contribution. It's minute. But having said that, the third biggest economy in the world has only got a population of 126 million. That's Japan. If you look at Japan and you think of brand names that come out of Japan, whether it's Toyota, whether it's I don't know if Samsung comes out of Japan, but I think you can list the number of successful companies that have come out of Japan. It's got a small contribution with regards to population. And the reason I'm highlighting that as much as it is frustrating that Africa as a continent, our contribution is small, but with the capabilities we've got, skills, especially from a digital perspective, it takes us to another level. And the reason I'm highlighting that is that what COVID has done, it has, to a certain extent, even the playing field when it comes to economic impact because of digitization. In the past, if you had an engineer in Africa who was very capable, or a medical doctor was very capable, for him to play in the big space, whether it's the US or Europe, he had to physically get there, participate, etc., register. It required a lot of investment, and a lot of people not getting this opportunity. What digital has done now, it said, okay, guys, let's give everybody access to technology so that they can participate. So you've got doctors now doing heart transplants in the virtual plane. You've got engineers participating in global discussions because nobody wants to travel. They all want to be in the digital space. What has happened now is that our skill sets and our capabilities have been exposed. And what we require now is now to be able to commoditize that to make an impact. And I think the beauty of organizations like MultiChoice, organizations like Uber, is that they've shown the impact that a digital platform can expose with regards to skill sets. So the opportunity that we have now as Africa is actually quite significant, because now we can participate in the global economy in a way that we've never been able to do before and make an impact. The idea now is to commoditize that. What I'm trying to say is that we have to make money out of it. Everybody's heard about the Continental Free Trade Agreement, how everybody's now going to say, kumbaya, we're all going to be integrated, it's got to open up borders, etc., etc. But what I'm saying is that, guys, let us not zone in terms of what we can just do from an Africa and focus on the pot of money that is going to be within the four walls of the African continent. And the reason that is, as I said, I go back to the statistics, that even if we grow by 10% as an African economy, that's 3.3%. But if we say, gosh, I'm actually now going to be able to use my skill set, and I was excited about what my colleague from MTN was highlighting, that their ladies obviously brought through affirmative action, but skilled and resourceful, that he can now put on the platform to use in terms of participating, bringing technology to Asia, to China, to the US, and make an impact. So I think where the opportunity is how do we commoditize our skill set to make money for the continent, but not limit ourselves to the four walls of this border. And that's where the killer is.
Okay. A very, very quick question, and that's, again, another hearsay. Is it safe to work in Africa? Because there's a lot of stories that we hear outside of Africa that, it's not a safe place to work, you can get killed and whatnot. So I'm putting it out there and asking that question directly for the audience, and I'm doing that deliberately, and I know that was not part of the question that I initially thought I will put in there, but it just came to mind. And guys, to the audience, if you've got a question like this, wait, Ronald, and I'll come to you. Audience, if you've got a question that you think you want to ask to these guys, and I'm telling you these are the best talent from Africa, then this is the moment. Put that in the comment section, and I will not shy away in asking that question like I just did. Is it safe to work in Africa? Roland, your turn.
It is very safe unless you tell me we don't have the skill set.
Good one. Mike?
Is it safe to go and work in the city center of Rio de Janeiro? Is it safe to work in East London? Is it safe to work in parts of Manhattan? Like, Shaylee, I think if we're going to have a debate and we're going to talk about real issues, we need to talk about actual factual statements. We need to talk about people that you are referencing, as otherwise it's just a topic about hearsay. And I think we've all got more important things to do than debate about hearsay during our days. We're very busy people. So I want to debate real issues, and I want to talk about actual substance, not about hearsay.
Okay, that's fine. Very good. So, in your personal view, what is the current state of digital transformation in Africa? Come on, let's talk about that.
Me?
Yep, Mike?
Shaylee, I just think we keep saying the same things. I mean, basically we've just told you, we've spent the last 5 minutes on a diatribe telling that we solve problems for needs of the people that we work with. For me, we are some of the best hustlers in the world. We don't have anything to prove ourselves. I wrote a book once called The Best Dick. We don't want to be the biggest dicks. We want to be the best dicks. We are the best at what we do. And that's effectively how we want to roll through our continent, how we want to be able to roll out solutions. Everywhere in the world you work is dangerous. Everywhere that you move between, you have the ability to have challenges. But if you're going to come to Africa, it's important to humble yourself and leave your ego and your arrogance at the door. I mean, for me, I've traveled backpack, drive, travel, like air travel through various countries on the continent. I've met some of the warmest and most amazing people who have the best skills and have the best hospitality. But the reality is, if you're going to come to Africa with the mindset that it's one place and that it's not multiple markets with multiple cultures and multiple backgrounds, you're going to come very short. And I think that's the reality about each of us on the panel today. We're all different. We all come from different backgrounds, shapes, and sizes. We've all had global and local experience. And I think ultimately, it's one of the best places to work. And I don't want to go anywhere else. Like I've been to Australia enough times to realize how much of a big brother mentality you guys are exposed to. Like in Africa, we make solutions. And those solutions are driven by people-orientated solves and by actually engaging with people on that human level. And that's why I love being here, man.
Good stuff.
I can't agree more. That's why I left. I mean, Australia. I mean, I was there 14 years, right? So there's a reason I left. And what's the state of digital transformation? I think I would advise people to come and see. I work with multinational organizations and solutions providers globally, right? And every time I have discussions with them about providing a solution or implementing a solution or building a solution for Africa, it's let's take a specific case study that's already been implemented in either Europe, Asia, or the US, and fingers crossed, hope it's going to work. And the answer for me is you're wasting my time, and you're also wasting the people's time. The one thing you really have to do, and Dr. Rutendo, I'm going to ask you to jump in at some point because you've got a great analogy about the half full, glass half empty, and the analogy of the calabash. You cannot have an outside-in view and hope that you can build the right solution. So that is the current state of digital transformation in Africa as a whole, in different countries. Mike touched on it, it's different in each country, right? But you need to really understand those nuances, the cultures, what drives, where does the IP sit, bring the IP and the workforce and their institutional knowledge on board to build the right solutions because they know what the problems are in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think just to pick up from the Ishmael, I'll explain the calabash theory that I made when I was talking to Bruce Whitfield on 702, but I'll just give you this true example. I was working for a multinational dream business in Africa. It was a digital company or a technology company, and I was speaking to an expatriate. I was running business up in Africa, and I was speaking to an expatriate from India who was based in Nigeria at the time. And I'm just relating to violence. And I think the issue of violence, I mean, it's relative. But at the end of the day, I mean, nobody likes it. It has to be dealt with. But I think it was Mike or somebody who mentioned how, different countries, there are different situations and you have to accommodate them. And he was an expatriate from India and he was based in Nigeria. And he said, when I wanted to make my expatriate decision, I had two countries I could choose from, South Africa and Nigeria. And he said the reason I chose, and it boiled down to the level of violence. And he said, obviously, South Africa is more prone. The statistics compared to Nigeria that's got more suburban violence. And he said, the reason I chose Nigeria to South Africa is that in Nigeria, when the guy comes to rob, he'll say, bless you, I'll see you again tomorrow. So he leaves you alive because he knows that he can come again tomorrow and rob you. Whereas in South Africa, statistically, the guy might, put a gun to your head, etc., etc. It's not a pleasant example. But I laughed with him because I kind of understood where he was coming from based on his perception. But ultimately, I think, you go to different parts of Africa. I'm from Zimbabwe. There's violent crime, but it's more from, there was a lot of violent crime that happened with regards to the farm acquisitions, etc., etc. But again, you go to Rio de Janeiro and something will happen. You go to the UK, something will happen. So I'm not going to zone in on the violence. Violence is everywhere. Whether it's happening anywhere to whatever extent, it's not great. And at the end of the day, it deters investors. But I think the point is, for you to understand the continent, you have to actually understand the intimacy of the differences. And the calabash theory that I highlighted was that when people look at a situation, they say, is the glass half empty or is it half full? And you're looking at it from the outside and you can kind of say, okay, the cool drink is half full or half empty. And based off that, you judge your level of optimism. But I said, when you look at a calabash by its nature, you can never tell of its contents by looking from the outside. You actually have to go into the mouth of the calabash and look at the contents from the top down in there, and then you know it's half full or half full or half empty. And based on that, they can make a decision. There might be alcohol in there might be water in there, but at the end of the day, my calabash theory is highlighting the fact that you have to look into the content. And with Africa, unfortunately, because of data and information that is there relative to everything else. People, when you look at it from an external perspective, you miss a lot of stuff. It's only you guys, like the guys sitting in this room, who have been in there, who understand the challenges that there is a South Africa, there is a Nigeria, there is a Kenya, different cultures, different dynamics. There's an Egypt, different cultures, different dynamics. When you navigate through there, you see the opportunities, you're able to tap into them, and digital allows you to do that to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about solutions. Mike mentioned, and even Roland mentioned the kind of solutions that you're creating in the African market. So what kind of solutions are there that are being created which are changing the lives of the people of Africa? Ari, you want to have a go at that?
I mean, I can refer to my current context, right?
Yeah,
and I think
sure.
that when you're looking at digital transformation, it's important to consider that it won't look the same across the board, across the world, right? And a prominent, I think, digital transformation, I think, equals mobile access and mobile technology for the continent of Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. And that's the only way we get to do business on the continent, right? I think that we are far ahead in understanding the importance of technology. I think sometimes some of the challenges that prevent pockets of a particular country from gaining access to that technology is infrastructure, right? Is the lack of power sometimes, and sometimes it is just not the ability to read. So they just aren't necessarily able to understand the technology itself. However, if you're able to put the importance or communicate the importance of that technology and what that transformation or what that addition to your society could do for you in their home language and understanding the context that they operate in, it's a very different conversation. If you're trying to, convert an American app or European app and try and say, okay, well, standard Swahili works across the board for East Africa, that's ignorant, because the type of Swahili that's spoken in Tanzania is very different to the type of Swahili that's spoken in Kenya. In addition, even parts of Kenya, right? Mombasa is different to Nairobi. And so when you understand the context of that country, if you even look at Nigeria, right? You look at the difference between Abuja and Lagos, very different. I think that mobile technology is probably consistent across the board, across a particular country. However, the penetration is different depending on the access to connectivity, the access to power. There's a difference, I think, across the board that needs to be understood before you make the assumption that we're maybe not where we need to be in terms of digital transformation. I think if you're an international company trying to come in, understand that local context and understand how you can partner with regulators and rule makers in that city and in that country in order to further challenges that they experience around infrastructure, power, or whatever the case is. Once you come in with that and you factor it into your budget, it's a very different conversation. However, if you're coming to plug and play and looking to just reap the rewards of that community, I think that you're going to be sorely disappointed. And I think for us, being able to operate across sub-Saharan Africa is only made possible once we understand how we can take the technology that we have and then utilize it, or at least tailor it to the communities that we work in. And now that's not an easy thing to do, right? It's not an easy thing to do because you're often having to make the case for why this is important every single time. Why is it important to add this additional investment? Why is it important to add translation capability to a technology? Why is it important to understand that you would need to have a backup for a backup in some parts of the continent? But even in understanding that, there's still magic that's created. There's still opportunities for people to contribute to their families, to their communities. And yeah, I think you cannot come in with thinking that we're the same as a London or a New York and then expect to be successful. You need to understand the nuances, you need to understand the cultural context, and you need to understand the language in order to be successful in even getting in on that transformation journey.
Mm-hmm.
Shalindra, can I just add on to that? Because she brings a very valid point. And because Uber, their model obviously has been groundbreaking and unique. But I just want to give a practical example in terms of how that kind of a solution practically impacts Africa, which is what we need now. So I was dealing as one project. We're looking at bringing transport solutions to Ethiopia. Now, just to give you some stats, just to support what I'm trying to say, in South Africa, more or less, you've got about a population of about 60 million people and 12 million passenger vehicles. So on average, we've got one, every family, 1 to 5 kind of ratio in terms of cars to people. And if South Africa has got the infrastructure and the road transport network system to accommodate that. Now we're looking at, the company was looking at investing in Ethiopia. Ethiopia has got a population of plus or minus 110 million people. And the number of passenger vehicles at the time, about 2 years ago, was about 1 million. So very small. So if you're a car manufacturer, by default, you think, oh gosh, let me just push more vehicles, passenger vehicles in that market. The problem with Ethiopia, though, and we look at the capital city, Addis Ababa, the congestion that is in that city is 10 or 20 times more than what you have in South Africa because of lack of infrastructure. So if you're a president trying to address a transport or a mobility solution, the answer is not necessarily throwing more vehicles into that space, but maybe saying, let's promote a public transport system, a shared service system, like an Uber, that's free advertising for you, Eddie, just letting you know, like an Uber or like a mobile train. I'm just giving it like a cow train. But what I'm trying to say is that a solution like Uber, because it's mobile, it's car efficient, it's technology based, can have a greater impact in that space as opposed to just throwing commodities. But you need a leadership in Africa that realizes, gosh, I've got a problem. How do I use technology to adapt to the problem? I hope you guys hear what I'm saying. And that is what will take the continent to the next level. So I just wanted to drop that in terms of a practical way of resolving a problem in Africa.
Roland, if you want to add any solution that you've seen is changing lives there in Africa?
Where do I start? I think, firstly, I think I work in a hugely transformative organization. Number one, because satellite technology enables us to do things that you can't otherwise in the rest of Africa, right? Just from an education perspective, the content that we distribute across Africa, from a religion perspective, it's amazing what we can and have achieved. But I also want to touch on the 2 points around why we do what we do. And I think the more we get to the why, rather than asking how can digital solve the problem, asking why the problem exists in the first place. And I don't think we do that enough. Because I don't know if you guys are aware, there's an analogy. What is the best crop to grow in time of drought? And the answer is not anything that you can put in the ground, but it's actually fish. So the question we're answering is not actually the question that was posed to us. So I think it's getting a bit tired now, but starting with why. What is that purpose? What does the customer need, the human need? If we start there, we might find that the solution may not even require digital. It might be as simple as just flicking off a switch.
Ishmael?
Well, I'm about to have a discussion with Mike after this session next week sometime. I'm in conversational AI and chatbots, right? And one of the big things, so for me, customer engagement is a massive thing, right? Driving revenue and removing cost to some degree, upskilling, and just improving on customer care and the customer experience framework and giving people the option to self-serve. Africa is yearning for that. Yes, it's happening to some degree, but here's a trick, and this is what Adi said, right? It's easy to build these things in the English language. What about those that speak Swahili and the different dialects? What about those in Zulu that speak Zulu or Xhosa or Sotho or whatever, or Shona or Ndebele, or wherever you may be in African countries? Why haven't we been able to, and I'm giving it away right now, right, on this call, right, is we need to build this stuff in African languages, and no one's got that right, right? And when I mean no one, everybody excluding me and my close circle who I have discussions with, and includes Roland, right? So, and it's important. And this is why the calabash analogy makes sense. This is why Adi's passion completely resonates with me in terms of ensuring that we understand what's happening from a language perspective. And that's where I'm going with solutions that are tailored for Africans in their own specific languages. And you need to get that right. Once you get that right, to the good doctor's point, you can then monetize it to some degree and keep that money in Africa and continue to build the skills within Africa.
Mm-hmm. Mike, what solutions do you see changing lives in Africa?
Well, I think when it comes down to our basic needs of humanity, I mean, like, hunger is a huge issue, poverty, if you look at transportation, remittance, like, these are basic human needs that need to be solved. AD touched on the electricity issues, renewables and energy in particular are of huge importance. We're also in a position where some of our markets are, experiencing change in climate. So you've got droughts in places that they weren't an issue before. We have day zero that is impending in certain places where you have, real need for water. So I think ultimately the solutions that are there are ones that can be complemented by a digital solve and the delivery thereof. So those aspects in particular are what I'm most fascinated about, what can be solved. People not having to pay money for taxi drivers to take cash across borders. We have some of the most functional and expert banking systems in the world. And I think those have been driven out of, once again, back to the start of the conversation, out of need. Like what you can do via USSD technology all the way to digital technologies have solved problems because people don't necessarily want to have to give a taxi driver cash to take it across the border. And I think that, when you talk about content delivery, like Roland mentioned it before, his business has some of the most incredible technology in the world, where the likes of the Skies and other Fox-owned products have actually borrowed from their technology because they've seen how successful it has been in the delivery across the continent. And I think that you look at Uber once again, because it's a conversation we've had on today's call, the way in which we use Uber is not necessarily to stick my person into the vehicle. I mean, I started using Uber as a courier service for me because it was just easier and it took out a pain point in my day. I mean, now it's become more formally integrated with the rollout of Uber Eats and parcel delivery that you're able to leverage the tech for. But Uber was never meant for me to stick my parcel in and send it to my neighbor or my printer or get my work done that needs to happen or send documents that need to be delivered in person. But that's the African mentality, is like, make a solve. You've got the tech, you've got the infrastructure, and you do it. And I think that's like an important point that I'd like to get across, is like, we're innovative people, and we take it very personally when you make outlandish sweeping statements that we think are BS.
Rutendo, you were raising your hand. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, somebody brought an interesting point about, Africa is suffering from hunger, and we know the statistics and the reality around that. I don't know if you guys know, obviously there's the whole thing about clean energy worldwide, et cetera, and climate change, and I'll get to the point in terms of what I'll highlight. But do you know that Africa only contributes 1% of global carbon footprint? So in terms of the global carbon problem, we only contribute 1%, so actually not part of the problem. We're not a big part of the problem. The other thing is that Africa attracts is the third highest ranked attraction of FDI towards agriculture. So after I think America, then followed by Asia, by South America, we attract at level number 3 FDI in terms of agricultural investment. So the irony is that if we're attracting that level of investment in agriculture, why are we hungry? And it's a frustrating point about Africa. But I think the point is that I'm focusing on agriculture, is that we know the world, no matter how digitally survey with the world becomes, people are going to want to eat. In Africa, we've got the land, we've got the property, we've got the climate, and we've got the right kind of climate. And if we start applying technology like drones, and we start applying technology like urban farming, et cetera, and we start applying it not only to feed our people, but to feed the rest of the world, we can become a power play in the economy globally at a different level by using a combination of technology and the resources that we have. And that has always been the mishap that is there. And that's why I'm saying what digital and technology is allowing us to do in this space is actually to reanalyze ourselves and reassess and say, guys, We're actually strong players, but how do we do that cleverly? And Israel has done it with desert farming. The Middle East have done it with desert farming. If we're able to position ourselves and get the right leadership to leverage off technology to make a global impact, this continent will be at a different level. I just wanted to add those 2 cents in terms of the points raised by my colleague.
Boom. We can all leave now after that. Thank you so much. Boom. Just drop the mic, mate. We're all good. Now go on, Shay. Go on.
Okay. Your thoughts on key considerations to enhance customer experience across Africa? I know we're focusing on Africa. So if you think about customer experience, what do you see? What do you think would be various things that needs to be done to actually improve customer experience? Do you want to start, Roland?
There's actually giving a crap about it is a start. I've seen so many CEOs, COOs, CIOs just not give a rat's ass about customers. I mean, it's just frightening, right? To the point where I've heard, and this is not from MultiChoice, because I mean our CEO has customer on his KPIs, but I had a discussion with one of the bank chief execs, and I was told, but customer is implicit in everything we do. It's flipping time to make it explicit, guys, because trust me, when you don't even have customer in your daily deliverables, you don't have it in your value set, you don't have it in your behaviors, it's not going to happen. So I think firstly start by giving a rat's ass, and secondly, everything you do should be centered around adding value to that customer. I mean, there's a lovely study, and I'll get the paper to you guys, but if you want to reduce cost, everything customers do is a cause of cost in your organization. So the less they have to do, the less effort they have to expend, the better it is for you. It's just simple math. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out. So to the good Doc's point, we need a drastic shift in leadership mentality.
Mm-hmm. Mike?
Sorry, just locating my mute button there. In terms of customer service, I think an interesting way in which so many of the brands that we work with have adopted Twitter, for example, has been completely different from other markets in the world. Like Twitter is a simple place where you can obviously funnel complaints and negativity, but I think the way in which a brand can jump onto that proactively to solve and actually surprise and delight a customer, I think it's incredibly important. And I think once again, you have so many examples from around the world, and the founder of Shake Shack, he spoke about enlightened hospitality. And I think if you approached and adopted that kind of thinking to not just African brands or African solutions, I think Roland's point is spot on. I think customer centricity has fallen to the back of the pile because budgets are being cut, jobs are being lost, and people are being retrenched in these tough times. And then you stop forgetting and you stop putting the customer at the heart of everything you do. And I think ultimately, how can you use technology and human empathy and just basic EQ to give your customer the best possible experience? Because if they don't have that love, they have a lot more opportunities and options to go elsewhere. And we're living in a world where customers are fickle because they can find love elsewhere and emotional connections.
Mm-hmm. Adi, what do you think?
Man, oh man, this is something that makes me tick. So I definitely resonate with Roland in that the first place you need to start is by being interested, caring, and not in the touchy-feely sense, but if you're committed to delivering value for the context that you operate on the continent, you need to care about what that output looks like. And you need to care about how it lands. And you need to care about the defects that are brought to your attention by how users of a platform or of a product or of a service, what those defects are. Be aware, listen. And I think Twitter is one of the ways in which it's very easy to get an immediate sentiment from a community. However, what you do with that and how you put that into a process and how you're consistently closing the gap and consistently closing the loop based on those, I think, indications of where your potential defects could be is the most critical part. And so, yes, empathy is important. Yes, understanding that the need for technology is critical, but you also can't do that without making sure that it makes sense, right, financially. So customer experience is not a nice to have. Customer engagement is not a nice to have. It is the only way in order for you to have a sustainable business. And so when you think about the business context, you cannot separate, like, I think it's probably most painful for me to hear senior execs to say, you know, we're customer centric. However, the way that you're structured by no means demonstrates that, right? You often look at the bottom line, but in no way do you look at what the defects are, what they costed you. You're not looking at, you know, when you're looking at typical like e-commerce, you know, why are you refunding people? Why are they even comfortable to contact you? For me, my notion is if they're comfortable to complain, that's great. That means that you're building loyalty, that you're building affinity. If someone is apathetic to your brand, apathetic to your product, you're in the danger zone. That is not where you want to live. But the key is when they communicate with you is to listen and to fix and to continuously do that. The continuous improvement cycle is critical. So I by no means want us to think that customer centricity, engagement or experience is a touchy-feely subject. It is hard dollar value, strategic thinking, moves that need to be made in this respect. It is not something soft to consider as a nice to have. So where we at on the continent itself, I think we've got a long way to go in some respect, because we need to understand how people want to be communicated to. We often assume that people read email. And so we build these elaborate email campaigns and we say, hey, they're going to read this and they're going to know what we're about. When in actual fact, that's not how they want to communicate with you. That's not how they want to hear from you. Understand whether it is SMS and it is expensive. Add that to your budget. Add that to the way that you calculate, your ROI for a particular initiative. If it is WhatsApp, understand what the privacy kind of rules that go with that is. Or develop a completely different platform that actually speaks to how people want to be communicated to. So it by no means is a cookie cutter approach. Understand basic 101. Understand your target audience. Understand the communication that they require or need from you. Understand what the defects are in your process, product, service. Once you do that and you're committed to fixing that, the bottom line will continue to grow. But if you neglect it, you will be remiss. I assure you. So it's not a nice to have. It's something that should be integral to any kind of business decision.
Okay, so let's get to we're just on top of the hour. Let's go to the closing remarks, and let's start with Mike and move counterclockwise. Mike, what do you think about digital transformation and customer engagement in Africa?
I love Africa, man, and I think there's no better continent in the world. We've got such unique and interesting people and solutions that we need to derive from the back of those problems. And thanks for having me. It's been awesome chatting to all of you. And looking forward to the closing remarks from everybody else.
Good stuff. Adi?
Man, yeah. First of all, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to, I think, for these minds to connect and speak on this. I think that we need to be cognizant. So I agree with Rutendo in that we need to learn how we commoditize whatever we do implement on the continent. I think that we need to leverage the diaspora. That's something that's a growing conversation and a growing movement at the moment, to see how we can help commoditize what it is that we implement. And I think that when you do come across someone making a comment about the continent and how we don't have the skills and how we're violent and it's dangerous and it's all of these negative things, I would implore you to correct them. I would implore you to encourage them to come and see what we're about and to learn more intrinsically what makes us tick, instead of making assumptions. So yes, thank you for having me.
Good stuff, Adi. Rutendo?
Yeah, just quickly, two things from my side. One is Africa, let's move out from the consumer mindset. No economy grows by consumption. No country grows by consumption, and go into terms of productivity, and digital allows us to do that. On the customer-centric side of it, great opportunities that digital allows us. And I know he's a controversial figure, but if you want to see the impact of knowing your customers and using it, whether for a good way or bad way, look at Donald Trump, the American elections. As much as people had controversies around him, 78 million people went to vote for him, even with his weaknesses. And you realize when you use digital to get to your customer, you can make an impact. So I just wanted to leave that as a closing statement, the importance of customer centricity in line with what everybody's saying.
Roland?
Yeah, I just want to reflect on something Adi said earlier. Customer experience is deliberate by design. It's not something that happens through inertia. And there are frameworks and ways to do this. And if anybody needs, just reach out and we can help. I want to go slightly off topic. And in closing, I just want to say we also need a mindset shift in Africa by Africans who also think we don't have the skill and we don't have the capability. Our African leaders, our corporate leaders, start hiring local, start using local talent, start using local capability to build what we can obviously build at lower cost, faster and better. Ishmael and I were having an offline conversation. We have launched a multilingual chatbot in Africa. It works. It is 100th of the cost I was given by multinationals. And it's never failed us. And the other is look after your people and look after your customers, because if you don't, you'll be in the grave very soon.
Ishmael?
Well, please, thank you. $180 billion economy future in Africa, 700,000 developers sitting in Africa, the youngest population, large urbanization. I mean, Africa is the future, and if you don't believe it, just Google it. Right? If you don't believe it, talk to someone at the IFC. If you don't believe it, talk to Dr. Rutendo, talk to AD, talk to Mike, talk to Roland, talk to the people that are actually here, the people that understand the continent, the people that drive digital and customer and just anything growth that has a growth potential in Africa. Talk to the right people. That's what I implore anyone who may be listening to this session. And we're here to help. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? I live by the mantra, be the beacon of light to enable others to succeed. And I live that every day, right? So if anyone has a question or a comment and would like to reach out to us, do so, or else, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Good stuff. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to the show. And it was a pleasure having all of you here and taking time off. Thank you very much. And I'll speak to you later.
Thanks,
So guys, those were the leaders out from Africa. I would take some of the comments that are there, but I must say one thing. All of the things that we hear around Africa are hearsay, and what we're trying to do here is try to tell people and change their perspective that it's not like that. And that's why these kind of sessions where you hear from people in Africa who actually live and breathe every day what's going on in Africa. And we have to change that perspective. And to change that perspective, we need to talk more and more about how the life there is out there and what kind of skills they're available there. It's kind of exposing the world to what's going on there. And that's why the session. And I think these guys did a great job in explaining to you guys how Africa is different to the rest of the world and how they're growing significantly in digital transformation and customer engagement and making a difference, not only within the country, within the continent or country, their country and the continent, but also to the world. And I think we need to spread that awareness and educate people outside of Africa that there is something and a huge opportunity out there to use those kind of resources which are available, and we could use them. Okay, very, very quickly before I go, we did say we'll take comments, and let's take those comments. So we've got, if I've got the name right, Tatsi Romutwala, watching from South Africa. Annalise Matietsi, if I've got it wrong, watching from South Africa. We've got Kiran Ramacharan from Randburg in South Africa, and Mojisimala watching from South Africa. There's a comment from Banu, and he says, Sherry, great to see you brought an African perspective into your show. It's a very promising market, and very happy to see your guests from Africa. Yeah, thank you, Banu. Pleasure having you watching the show. We had Temba Mudinsela. Assumption is a waste of time, I agree. And that's the problem. People are assuming because they're not exposed to what's happening in Africa. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to share the real picture, what's happening in Africa, so that people can learn from these leaders, these digital leaders in Africa, and they can showcase to the world what's going on. And that's why this session. So guys, thank you very much. Thank you for watching this session. Hope you learned a few things about Africa, digital transformation, and customer engagement. And if you've got any comments, if you want to reach out to any of these guys, please do reach out to them directly, or reach out to me and I'll reach out to them on your behalf, and we can take it from there. So guys, thank you very much. Thank you for watching the show, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.